number one, do you think Trump has entered his lame duck phase? Yes or no? And two, what do you think that lame duck phase will look like, and how do you think he will, what areas will he invest his time and energy into?
Well, as Matt pointed out, there's already Republican members of Congress that are actually themselves lame ducks that are willing to go against the president's agenda. So I think that's pretty notable. I think Trump will never consider himself a lame duck really until his last day in office. You know, it's going to be January 19th, 2029. So that is still quite a ways ahead. But, you know, I think he is still going to say, you know, he won all the swing states in a landslide back in 2024. And so he still sees kind of the will of the American people with him, regardless of how, you know, day-to-day polling shakes out and things like that. I do think that it's interesting to look at particularly some not so much the heavily Republican seats, but some of the more swing seats. I think this war, the longer it drags on, is a vulnerability for Republicans going into the midterm. So even though Trump himself may not feel it, there are definitely Republicans on the ballot that will be on the ballot this November that are looking at that and are looking at it quite heavily. But I also think it's interesting to note how nationwide really see what Trump's role in the Republican Party is going to be. You know, we've already seen, for example, just last week in Iowa, the Trump-endorsed candidate for governor ended up not being the nominee out of the primaries. We have a contest in South Carolina coming up this Tuesday in a primary election where I think people were a little bit confused why President Trump endorsed who he did in that primary, and so it'll be interesting to see whether another candidate that has his endorsement goes down or whether his endorsement is going to be able to shepherd that person out of the primaries as he has in most other cases in the primaries. And so I think really these in-state contests are actually a really good look about how the Republican base feels about the president and the power of his endorsement. And, you know, I think at the end of the day, that is going to see how much not having his name on the ballot is going to play into people actually being able to be energetic and get out and, you know, actually get out and vote for people that either have his endorsement or may not necessarily in some of these contests. And so I think, you know, there's definitely a lot of factors that point to the Republican base still being with him, but there are kind of some emergences of people saying, you know what, we're going to make our own decisions, especially here in our more local and more state elections. And so, you know, that's kind of really what we're seeing play out here is this big debate about whether Trump still has an iron grip on the Republican Party or not.